Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, or in this video, we about my first impressions of the Tau Empire, but not from the perspective of playing them, rather from the perspective of playing against them. I've only played against them one time, and this is as Chaos Space Marines. Now, once again, to preface this, or as a preface, I'm a Chaos Space Marine player. I'm not a Tau player. I've only played against the Tau one time. This is also before the most recent data slate, so this was before their army rule got buffed. This was before the changes to the Kauyon detachment happened, and some of the points adjustments and rewording of certain data sheets happened. And once again, in this one match, my opponent, a friend of a friend, and I both did not know much about each other's armies, other than I knew that he wants to shoot things because he's the Tau. Tau do pretty good shooting. And then he knew that I'm playing Chaos Space Marines, and Chaos Space Marines tend to be more aggressive and a bit more melee oriented. So, beyond that, we both walked into that one game not knowing much about each other's armies and what they do. Now, how that game went. So it was a Chaos Space Marine versus Tau Empire game. I was playing Creations of Bile, and my opponent was playing the Kauyon detachment. So on turn 1, I almost lost my Rhino transporting Fabius Bile and 10 Chosen to 2 Piranhas in the first turn, because I was unfortunate enough to go second. Alongside that, there was some other shooting that ended up happening. Andreas, my opponent, was really trying to target my transport. Ended up taking it down, I believe, to 2 wounds. But that was all pretty much that came of it, other than just him moving things up the board, getting things positioned. And then on my turn 1, it was dealing with those 2 Piranhas with my Predator Destructors and whatever melee I was throwing into them, because I did have some things that were kind of close and could just beat them down. Turn 2, he once again tried to shoot some of my stuff, shoot some of my Chosen, shoot some of my Possessed, and took some pot shots at my Predators. Nothing really stuck, or either nothing got wounded or nothing was landed in terms of hits. On my turn 2, I countercharged with my two units of 5 Possessed and some Legionnaires. Ended up securing 2 of the midfield objectives, one at the top of the map, one at the bottom or top of the board. On turn 3, from what I recall, and this game happened a while ago, he deep struck in some, I believe they were battle suits, had them really try to gum up things for me. Like, he had one group in my deployment zone near my home objective. He had other battle suits that were trying to gum up my Possessed, make sure that they couldn't do anything. Overall, in terms of casualties, by turn 3, I lost 2 cultist mobs. Both of them were sizes of 10, and one of my Legionnaire units of 5 was brought down to 1 model. So that was how turn 3 went. On my turn 3, I deep struck in Vashtor, the Archfane, into his deployment zone because he left just a nice little spot near 2 of his Devilfish. And so Vashtor and one of my Predators, who happened to have line of sight and or be within range of the Devilfish, managed to take both of those Devilfish down within turn 3's shooting and charge and fight phase. But from there, the game was quickly escalating to where Andreas, as my opponent, just didn't have board control. He couldn't get me off of objectives. He couldn't outfight what I had. He could outshoot what I had, but once things closed the gap, inevitably things got rough. So I ended up winning the game by the start of turn 5. And that was mostly due to just there being such a points deficit, and it was at the point where the only way that my opponent would have won or had any possibility of winning was to just table everything of mine, which with the given units that he had remaining and how a lot of the threatening ones are tied into, melee with my chosen or possessed or obliterators, and they were in corners of the board, so they couldn't really move without making desperate escape saves. Things went very rough for my opponent as the game just went on. Now, with all that being said, the general TLDR of that match, what are my impressions of the Tau as someone who has not played them but has played against them? And the first point being the Kalyan detachment. It looked pretty all right, like pretty good, all things considered. Before the data slate, I will say I'm not a big fan just from reading it and being told what it does, about how it very much requires you to you have to like wait until turn 2, turn 3 until things start happening, like you get the sustained hits 1 or 2 and all that. But it didn't seem too bad. I'm probably wrong. I'm not a Tau player, so feel free to correct me if I'm mistaken in that. Obviously, feel free to correct me if that's changed since the data slate. The Tau army rule seemed very punishing before it got adjusted or changed in the data slate. Very punishing for split firing, and especially when my opponent, my friend's friend, was telling me about how a lot of data sheets for the Tau, or at least a good deal of them, tend to have multiple weapon profiles, and it's like one profile is good for anti-chaff, one profile is good for vehicles or tougher things, and then another profile is better for like shooting into space marines, kind of, and it's like that where you don't necessarily want to shoot everything you have into, let's say, a rhino, because it's a vehicle, it's a transport. You technically should only really need to shoot the anti-vehicle stuff into it, and then if at the absolute end of need you need to use your infantry or chaff shooting into that unit, then that's when you do it. Their units, moving past that, their lack of keywords on their weapons was kind of surprising. Like, I'm honestly surprised that the Tau don't have many keywords, if any, on other weapons. With my opponent in that match, he was having a hard time dealing with Vashtor and my chosen, my little 5-man bands of chosen, because of just either invulnerable saves from Vashtor, or in the few cases where the Chaos Lord ended up taking wounds. He was just struggling. It's weird. It's strange seeing an army that doesn't have many keywords on things. And beyond that, their units themselves weren't that hard to take down. Granted, this may seem biased just from coming from someone who's played Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, and the Voton for a match. But their units didn't seem particularly stand out tough. I've not dealt with like a Taunar or bigger, or like a large amount of Crisis battle suits and Devilfish. Like, he had 2 Devilfish and like 2 units or what I think it was of battle suits. But a lot of it was infantry, stealth suits, fire warrior breacher squads, some Kroots, some Kroot carnivores. It was, and some Vespits, but they didn't do much. They just kind of sat around. Their melee does indeed suck. I don't need to confirm that to anyone. Their melee does indeed suck. Tau are not very good at melee. I would have expected was it Commander Shadowsun to be a little bit better as a character into Close Wars. I know she's not Commander Farsight, but there's that. But they do have scary shooting. I walked into that game expecting to be shot off the board in places where there's just no cover, and I mispositioned things. And I basically had that happen to my rhino, because after that turn one round of shooting from those two piranhas, and they by themselves nearly took down my rhino. I had to I disembarked Fabius and his chosen, and then just kind of squirreled that rhino away for it to just kind of exist. It eventually started doing things later on once I gained control of the board effectively. Um, Beyond the gameplay kind of stuff, beyond their data sheets and how they feel and their shooting and whatnot, aesthetically the Tau do look really cool. They do have that typical, I guess you could say, like Gundam look to them, and I know a lot of people tend to say that, oh, the Tau are the weebs, they're the culturally inspired by Japanese anime and what have you. I don't think that. I think that's, if anything, more the Eldar. But the Tau do look really cool. Their lore is pretty neat, and it's just kind of generally interesting how they seem to be in 40K the only good faction. But that's a good with like an air quotes at an asterisk next to it. But yeah, overall, I think that they're an all right faction. As someone who's had to play against it, I'm sure that since their data slate, they've gotten stronger. I don't know. I need to play against Andreas again. I'm sure he wouldn't mind a rematch. I know since then I've adjusted my Chaos Space Marine list. It doesn't have its Predators anymore. It has Forge Fiends, but I've done some adjustments. But I think they're all right. They definitely aren't too bad to deal with. But before we close off, I also do think that it has to do with just terrain. Not if you have too little terrain, you're going to have a worse time as a more melee-oriented army, and if there's too much terrain, Tau get more screwed over. But with that closing point, guys, I thank you all for watching and listening. Feel free to comment down below what your thoughts are of the Tau, either as a Tau player or as someone who may mayhaps play against Tau a lot, either at your local game store or if you happen to play a lot on Tabletop Simulator, like how I have. What are your thoughts? Do you have any issues with how the Tau are or how they've been? Do you wish that some of their units had certain keywords to help with like deal with enemies that have invulnerable saves? Let me know. As always, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more content like this, or if you have any pointers with like maybe how to deal with the Tau if you find yourself playing XYZ kind of army for Chaos Space Marines, or hell, even Space Marines or the Photon, since those are the three armies I actually have an interest in playing. But yeah, with that, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, wonderful night, wonderful evening. If you didn't have a good day, I'm sorry to hear that. Hope it can always turn around, and it always can. Consider liking the video. Consider maybe subscribing. You don't have to. It's perfectly fine if you don't. But until the next time, guys, hope you have a great one. And I hope you have a great time on the tabletop against whatever factions you play against. So take care until the next time.